Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me again. My name is Wilky, and yes, this is not another gameplay video. We have been blessed with another update, or rather an update post. The update is scheduled for tomorrow morning on Thursday, and is said to be, the maintenance is expected to last 5 hours, so this is a rather big update that we're gonna get. Now there's a lot to take in, but quick rant here, these information are still not all available on the website, which I think is kind of not that great. So if you want to read all of this, you have to go to the Discord, but some pieces are also available on the website. Needless to say, people like myself are going to be here to dissect this and give you guys, a quick rundown of what's going to be happening. Now, animal ranching feature, I think this is fairly self-explanatory. You can tame and or capture animals in the wild, and at some point in September you're going to be able to breed them to obtain rare and unique critters. So maybe you can actually mix and match races. I don't know. We're going to be seeing how this goes. This is definitely something for people that like sort of like livestock, or this sort of like base building settlement part of the game. Revamped Fishing system, they will actually change the fishing system. Now I don't want to talk about this too much because we don't really know how it exactly plays out. I would much rather talk about this once we actually have in-game footage of how the new fishing system works. What's good though is we're going to get more fish, so it's going to be easier to hit the season goal, and there is some quality of life feature. There's going to be a new mode which is exclusive to the Evolutions Call. This is the PvP scenario, so if you are on a PvE/Manaba server, right, myself and out now, you will not be able to make use of this event. Essentially, it's going to be another PvP event where you can obtain Sproutlet tides. A Sproutlet tide can be converted to a Sproutlet at a 1-to-1 conversion. Now this begs the question, why even introduce a Sproutlet tide in the first place if you're just gonna convert it into 1-to-1 ratio anyway? So why not just give them Sproutlets directly? But hey, there might be something that I'm not aware of. Just a minor rant here, but I guess they do love their resources or currencies, so it is what it is. Ancient Ones Trial, there is a new, quote-unquote, new event that's gonna be happening, or rather like a server event similar to like the Manabus Arms or anything else like the Trials or the Disco. This is, at least according to the patch notes, available on every server in the highest mountain in Chalk Peak, so you can probably see them in the bottom left corner if you open your map. Now, boy, let me take a quick breath. Mod conversion. I think this is going to be the elephant in the room. Level 40 plus or not on the novice season. I think that makes sense. Somebody who's fresh in the game doesn't really need to convert mods. Much likely they will not even have enough mods to use their conversion. Now, how this works is, at least I understand this as follows. You need 6 legendary mods unenhanced, so 0 out of 5 enhancement. You slap them together and you get 1 legendary with the stat that you want. So let's just say you're hunting for 3 strikes and you are unable to get it, or your luck is just terrible, or you don't want to run the silo to get it. You just farm any other 6 mods, you slap them together, and then you pick, I want 3 strikes. In order to control the suffix that's going to be added, 4 out of the 6 mods need to have the same suffix. So let's just take the 3 strikes example again. I want a precision 3 strikes with the precision suffix. That means that 6 mods are needed, 6 legendaries, and 4 of these, probably 5 or 6 as well, but at least 4 of these need to have the precision suffix, or whatever suffix you want, and then the output is gonna have the suffix. Now this one here is a bit worrying about me. The converted mod attribute levels depends on the attribute levels of the 6 mods used for the conversion. As far as I understood this is probably they're probably talking about substat levels, like they go from grade to legendary in terms of like levels, so it's like 1 to 5, and we don't really know how this exactly plays out, but from what I understand is if you have higher quality subsets as a material, your output is gonna have higher level subsets as well. Now we don't really know if there's more control to this. Overall, I think this system in general is good. It still doesn't sound like a very nice feature because you still have to do a lot of farming, but it at least gives you an opportunity to use existing mods and not just dismantle them. So I think overall it's a win. We're gonna see how this plays out and how this, for example, entails with the new suffixes that we're gonna get. Controller support, there's not much to talk about this. I think it's great. More people in the game is always better. Some people like different input devices, so all the power to them. cross-character sharing for paid content. Now, this is something they talked about earlier, that you have a one-time use for cosmetics. So this is now going to be addressed. Server invitations. Now, I think this is another huge thing. Essentially, what this means is there are server caps, which makes sense because you can't just have everybody playing the same server. Now, what this meant, if your friends, for example, started a day, 2 or 5 days later, your server may have been full. Now there's going to be these special invitation codes, which allows friends to enter the server even if it's already full. So it's essentially, there is a soft cap, and there is probably going to be a hard cap at some point as well. But let's just say you can only have 5,000 people on the players, 4,000 can join normally, and then there's going to be a headroom for people that want to invite their friends. I think this is a really cool feature. There's probably going to be some number crunching happening here and there. But yeah, once the server reaches limit, players may join it even if they have the code. So that's essentially what I just said. So I think this is cool, this is good, and it addresses some of the most vital issues. Now, seasons and scenarios, we already talked about this before. This is also part of the information that is available on the website, so I highly recommend reading up on that. We're going to skim over this. There are going to be some season optimization. And yeah, I think what's more important here is the upcoming season, we are releasing a new scenario with a higher difficulty. The scenario will include 2 combat environments. We already talked about this, so there's going to be something going on. And different cradle override combinations, super anomaly types, exclusive blueprints, and calibration blueprints. There are 2 difficulties, normal and hard. On hard mode, essentially everything is going to be spiked up in terms of damage numbers, or you're going to be dealing less damage, whatever. But you're going to get more rewards. Now, this is, I would rather have pretty good clarifications on what this actually entails, because additional rewards may just mean something as 10% extra energy links or something, or may mean a higher quality of mod drops, or additional mod drops, or something like that, right? I think this really should be clarified before people decide, because, you know, we don't really know how hard or how much the difference between normal and hard is going to be. So whether or not the risk is worth it or the challenge is worth it should be clarified, at least in a bit more detail, for me personally. There's some more shop arrivals, we're going to be skipping that, light forge loot crates, and a new skin for a motorcycle. Event updates. Now, these events are already in-game, so I'm not going to be talking about those. Gameplay optimizations. Essentially, they optimized a lot of the things in Primor. I think the biggest takeaway is that the cooldown timer is now 5 minutes, not 30. This was insanely stupid, because sometimes, you know, the server haphazardly just jinxed the entire fight, or you had somebody trolling. Then everybody has to wait for 30 minutes before you are able to start it again. I think this is really good. And they just adjusted a couple things with building to allow people to go quicker and more easily. Territory purification has been changed a little bit, and there are some other adjustments here. This is for a PvP server only. Now, there have been more optimizations. As I said, we're going to be skipping those. This is for building, this is for deviants, and this is also talking about something new, so we don't really know what exactly this entails. I think the most important part here is that great ones, so all the bosses in your monoliths, are no longer considered as deviants. The bonus damage against deviants will no longer apply. It's going to be curious or interesting to see how this plays out, because sometimes there is quite the large effect or deviant damage, and this is going to be mentioned in a few sections below. Excuse me. Now, balance optimizations. I'm not going to be covering a whole lot of this. I highly recommend everybody read this section and figure out if this is something that is applying to you or that you're encountering in-game. For me, since I'm a PvE player, I don't really do PvP, and the PvP I do is for Sproutlets, and let's just say most of the time it's just, well, it's just shooting, essentially, ducks. But hey, it is what it is. So there are some changes to some cradles and old huntsman boots. Now, as far as I understand this, essentially before, or how it's currently working, if you triggered bullseye, your next hit on anything will be a weak spot. And after this update, the next hit after, like the next hit on a marked target will count as a weak spot. So you can't just weak spot something and then switch to your main target. This is no longer going to work unless the main target is already marked. I'm not entirely sure if this is a they are talking about a PvP change here. I guess this is just about that you can't just get your weak spot hit on a critter or a random target around you, and then just weak spot clap somebody from a distance. I think that is what their change is reflecting, but as I said, I'm not a PvP player, so take this with a grain of salt. Now these are some deviations that have been changed. Fabled Masamune, some crit damage. The long axe has been slightly nerfed. Stun baton has been greatly buffed, I think. This is another huge thing. Now, this is essentially a power reduction by 50%. The recurve crossbow gained you 30% crit against the target when you hit the weak spot and apply bullseye. Now this is going to be only 15%. Now this, I think, is a very drastic change. I think this will eliminate this sidearm for a lot of people. I'm curious to see if they may alter some of the other substats here, but this is a discussion on its own. Doombringer, this is also another thing. So essentially they really want you to get up close and personal with a shotgun. I think that is fair. I'm not entirely sure if the 5 meters is a fair adjustment. Maybe 6, 7, or 8 meters would be better, but we have to see how this plays out. Essentially, when you're close to the target, you're going to have an even higher chance of triggering bullseye, so essentially it's a buff as long as you're within 5 meters. And once you're outside of these 5 meter ranges, you're going to have a 30% trigger chance. Since you still have 6 pellets, it's a fairly good chance. So, and since Great Ones are no longer deviants, we adjusted the deviation handling. This is one of the cradles. Before, having the deviation fight alongside grants 50% damage against deviants. So this applied to monolith bosses. Now, having the deviation fight alongside grants 50% damage against bosses and elites. And having the deviation fight alongside grants 25% damage against bosses and elites. So this is a relatively drastic change. We're going to see how this exactly plays out. But I think this is more important for the upcoming seasons rather than for the existing ones. So since this is still staying for the novice season, it's just there. Developer notes, this one is a bit more important because when damage testing, a lot of people reported that the actual sheet number does not reflect what you've seen in game. And we essentially received clarification that the penetration type, like there are 3 damage types: penetration, suppression, and I think the other one is called impact. Don't name it that one. And they are only mentioned in terms of they give you a increased damage against a certain type of enemy. So penetration increases damage against Rosetta targets. But we didn't know that penetration also means that you deal less damage, in this case against deviants. And since the dummy counts as a deviant, or counted as a deviant, you would be dealing less damage when using penetration type weapons. So every weapon that has the penetration perk on it would deal less damage on the dummy. Now, I think they should just clarify this, or rather, I'm questioning why there even is a damage reduction against other enemies or slash types. Why not just give it a boost and just leave the rest unchecked? But I guess maybe that is a balancing part, or they wanted to push people to use specific weapons against specific targets. Needless to say, more bug fixes happening here. They added some new stuff. Now this one is a bit more of a handful. There's 4 more calibration blueprints coming. They don't really clarify what exactly we're going to get, so we have to see how much or what this entails actually in game in terms of stats and usefulness. And there are 2 more suffixes, one for PvE and one for PvP. So the resonance one increases sustained damage output when dealing weak spot, crit, and elemental damage. I think it's important that this one says and. So resonance means your weak spot, your crit, and your elemental damage are going to be increased all at one stat. Now, I'm curious about the number in this regard, and this is going to be available on pants and gloves in the Primor. So there's more reasons for people to do primers again. Curious to see what the numbers are in this, because this sounds, especially for builds that can make use of weak spot and crit or elemental damage, this sounds pretty hefty. But obviously there is RNG to it, so we're going to be seeing how this goes. A lot of optimizations, a lot of, you know, stuff where people would glitch through the ground, deviations not working correctly or working too good, some survival optimizations, and automatic flashlight. I mean, apparently it has been an issue for some people, so there's that. Recipes will now stay. I think this has been mentioned in a past patch notes before. And you can now sprint at a reduced speed if you are under certain conditions. Now the guide is a bit more optimized. The map optimization is a bit more optimized, so it now leads you in a correct way. Some optimizations for vehicles and world exploration. And yeah, just in general, a bunch of optimization. As I said, I think this is really specific to your gameplay or how much this has affected you. Slightly reduce the difficulty of Oryxiam Dungeon. I'm curious what this means. Less damage, less HP, less poison damage. This can mean anything. I'm really not a fan of these general statements. Like, slightly reduce the difficulty. What does it mean? Slightly reduce what? Damage output? HP? This can mean a myriad of things. I would just really have a better clarification what this means. Some more optimizations in terms of Eternal Land. Trading has been adjusted a little bit. Other optimization, increased scan range for the space-time queue. I think this is really nice, because most of the time I just run around hammering Q. I think in the future they should genuinely just like either make it like an active globe around here or something. But I think increasing the range already is really nice. And finally, there's a lot of bug fixes. I'm just going to be leaving this out here. Boy, as I said, this is a lot. I personally think a lot of these changes sound good. I'm a bit torn about some of these in terms of how useful they are and how they would actually alter the gameplay that we currently know and have. Other than that, thanks, and I thank you guys for being here. Man, this was a lot. I did rush this video, so I excuse myself upfront for any spelling errors that I have thrown in. And thank you all for being here. As usual, a discussion is very welcome. Maybe I understood things incorrectly or I worded myself poorly. Feel free to put it in the comment section below. I would greatly engage in a community discussion about this. Needless to say, there's going to be more gameplay footage coming up, and yeah, I'm very excited for the Saturday. A bit worried, but mostly excited, so it's going to be left to be seen what exactly is happening. That is all for today. Hopefully this was insightful and helpful for some of you guys, and I will see you in the next one.